Hi, everybody. Hi, you guys can hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yes,
Sharon.
okay. So welcome to Seri Belajar Sama-Sama, an online talk show for various issues around activism held by the academic network of the movement for ending violence against women. So today's session is also a special edition because it is as a part of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and also to commemorate the International Days of Person with Disabilities. Therefore, we think that one way to celebrate this global campaign is by holding a virtual talk that is cross-national. And also this session is also special because it is also a collaboration between the academic network of the movement for ending violence against women, Disrupsi, Perempuan Papua, One Vision Alliance, and Coalition of Civil Society Against Sexual Violence. Okay, so everybody, my name is Ignacia. I'm currently working as Secretariat Officer in One Vision Alliance, and tonight I will be your moderator for this session. Before we are moving forward with the agenda, let me explain about our house rule to ensure this session is a safe space for all of us. The first one is this event is recorded. And please mute your audio during the session. If you want to ask the question, you can use the chat box. And please also put for whom the question is. And in case of breach of a security happens, we unfortunately would have to end this public talk, switch to a private session, and attendees can view the rest of the talk tomorrow on YouTube. A link will be sent to your email address. And this is the most important one. Please be mindful that this is a safe space. And so we have no room for any hate speech, and the committee will remove the participants who break the rules. And excuse me for a second, I'll use bahasa Indonesia. Jadi untuk peserta, teman-teman yang butuh terjemahan bahasa Indonesia, silahkan bisa klik ruang Rusia, ada tanda globe, bisa pilih yang Rusia untuk mendengarkan terjemahan bahasa Indonesia. Sepanjang sesi nanti juga akan ada subtitle dalam bahasa Indonesia yang akan muncul di layar teman-teman. Buat teman-teman yang membutuhkan terjemahan Bisindo juga bisa pin kalau misalnya membutuhkan, tapi kalau tidak salah harusnya saat ini penerjemah Bisindo sudah bisa dilihat oleh semua. Jika ada kendala teknis juga silahkan untuk menghubungi panitia di kolom chat, bisa ke Kakak Sabina yang menjadi host. Okay, so today we will talk about the challenges and opportunities of organizing and of course, we will talk about their amazing initiative in conducting gender justice movement later. But now I will introduce you to the first speaker. Hi, Andrene. So this is Andrene from Chicago, currently a doctoral candidate of political science at Northwestern University and graduate assistant for gender justice and digital life at Northwestern University Buffett Institute for Global Studies. So good morning, Andrene, from the other side of the world. How are you?
I'm well, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I think it's quite early in the morning, yeah?
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. It is 7 a.m.
Oh. Yeah. I used to still in my pajamas at that time.
Oh, I know, no. I had to put on a quick dress. It's very minimal. So,
yeah, good to hear that. So the second speaker is Ninies, currently working as project officer of the USAID-funded program, Creative Youth for Tolerance, or CREATE, at Southeast Asian Hivos office. So good evening, Ninies.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Ninies airing from one of the suburb area in Jakarta called Kalibata, or if it's translated into English, that would be Brick River. So yeah, hello everyone.
Okay, so How is Jakarta, Ninies? How is your day?
Jakarta is busy as usual. The commuter lines or our trains, local trains, are getting full during the rush hour, and yeah, because the Brick River area is really like 5 steps into the commuter line. So yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people working during the rush hour and take trains to get home.
Mhm.
And yeah, today we break a record for newly infected cases of COVID-19 for 8,000 new cases, I
Right.
guess. And yeah, sadly, I couldn't claim that as an achievement.
Of course, it's not. But yeah, I mean, like in the public space, we will see like Corona is already gone because like everybody is already very busy in every place. Okay, guys. So this talk show is divided into 3 sessions. The first one is about both of the speaker experience conducting gender justice movement. The second session will talk about organizing strategies, and the third session is question and answer. But of course, if you have any question pop up in your mind anytime, you can just type it in the chat box. And if it's relevant with the current topic that we talk about, I will directly ask to the speaker. So without further ado, let's jump into the first session. So I will go to Andrene first. You have a lot of initiative related to gender justice, and one of it is gender justice and digital life. So would you please to share to us about how this initiative going and what is the aim to the participants?
Sure. So with Northwestern and my position for the gender justice and digital life, my goal is to tackle it's really to tackle gender justice in a digital sphere and also a campus sphere. So on campus, we're really trying to make sure that there is an enhanced gender equity in both visibility and in inclusion. So whether that's our staff and students, our priority is to make sure that everyone is heard, seen, whether that's the Black community, the Black trans community, LGBTQ community, all of this, our goal for campus life is to make sure they are seen and included. For the Gender Justice and Digital Life Working Group in a larger global scale, we are attacking gender justice in the digital sphere. So whether that's looking at sexual violence or abuse online through Zoom bombing is a good example. So an example of sexual violence in Zoom in the classroom, the digital classroom sphere, is if we see someone targeting a certain classroom or targeting a gender conference, and then perhaps Zoom bombing and putting in a sexual abuse on children in the actual classroom through Zoom. That's an attack of gender justice, and that's something that we take very seriously. Online platforms such as social media is also important in this context. Online platforms like Facebook, Instagram, etc. These are kind of the 2 things that we elevate. And these are the kind of 2 things that I am passionate about.
Oh wow, okay, that's really impressive. And actually, like I have a lot of things to be asked about, but maybe we save it for later. I will go to Ninies first. You're currently working for the Create project, as I mentioned before, which, as long as I know, the aim is to improve pluralism and tolerance among young people through an innovative arts and culture-based approach. So how is the gender justice approach is used in the program?
Wow, yeah, a very thoughtful question. I've been working for one of the USAID funded programs called Creative Youth for Tolerance. I'm working for the lead of the consortium, since I'm working with Hivos Southeast Asia, which is the lead of the consortium, Create consortium. We're trying our best to mainstreaming our gender equality and social inclusion pillar to the program. So yeah, we are assessing and we are conducting baseline study, and of course the other series of study like midline and endline study using GACI approach.
Kami juga menggunakan pendekatan GACI, pendekatan GACI yaitu kesetaraan gender dan inklusi sosial, dan menggunakan lensa tersebut untuk sebisa mungkin
prioritize the groups from marginalized groups or vulnerable groups, or we usually call it as historically oppressed groups, as our priority beneficiaries. So yeah, youth with different sexual orientation or coming from underprivileged backgrounds are become our priority to be targeted as our beneficiaries in the program. And one last thing about the program that I'm working on is, yeah, we are using the art and cultural based approach, because we are aware that actually Indonesia has a lot of cultures that should be enabling for gender justice. If Indonesian activists here familiar with the Bugis 5 gender cultures, Kolchalai, Calabaya, that's one of our approaches to be mainstream on the programs that we are doing. And yeah, we are trying to also digging into some other unique stories or cultural stories coming from 3 different provinces, because we are working in 3 different provinces, West Java, South Sulawesi, and East Java, which apparently they are having their own social norms, which maybe patriarchal, but also in another side also can enable the gender justice. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Ninies. That's a really amazing project, I guess. And I want to also ask if you use any digital approach to spread to increase the tolerance and also the acceptance and inclusiveness.
Yeah, it's a bit it will sound a bit paradox when we talk about the inclusive aspect and in the internet approach, because we know that Indonesia is not the country where internet is available for everyone equally. And during the program implementation, we are we indeed trying to adapt the context of the program into the digital world, since we are now having the distant learning approach by the government, and also all of the events, all of the community engagements and community mobilization are now being mobilized and being engaged through online sphere. But yeah, one of the interesting points that I want to highlight at this talk is when we are trying to adapt ourselves and our programs into a more online heavy method or online heavy communication sphere, we also need to aware that there is a consequences, a lot of consequences, but one of the most notable consequences are the inclusive aspect of it, because even in West Java, for example, near Jakarta, like 5 hours from Jakarta, we are still dealing with the unavailability of internet access for students. And yeah, that's one of the points that I want to talk about here.
Yeah, I know that when we talk about inclusivity, of course, it means like an equal access for everyone to access the information, the educations, and the other things. But yeah, when we talk about for example, only the internet access in Indonesia, not to mention the other area, even sometimes in Jakarta itself, when you move to the other part that may be almost in the other province, in the border area of Jakarta itself, it's like the internet connection is already bad. not to mention that the area that's already in the rural area. And I want to ask this question to Andrene. Did you face like the same challenge related to the internet, for example, because your work, your initiative is related to the using of the internet?
Yeah, Ninies, I really appreciate you elevating that really important point, that access and computers, internet is not something that's equitable to everybody. And I do think that we are cognizant of it, and we are trying our best. I do think for my position, a lot of the times we are placed, or at least my work is placed in the university setting. And so that is already exclusive in and of itself.
Di universitas, dan sesungguhnya adalah situasi yang sudah eksklusif. Dan posisi saya di working group itu juga sebenarnya di setting dari universitas. Jadi ketika kita berbicara tentang gender-based kekerasan berbasis gender di kampus, bagian dari pekerjaan saya adalah untuk membangun hubungan antar universitas, tapi juga masih silo untuk setting di universitas. Salah satu cara kami untuk menghandle ini adalah untuk melihat setting di beberapa universitas yang berbeda dan kendala-kendala apa yang mereka miliki. Misalnya ketika mereka mencoba untuk masuk ke dalam kuliah online, dan hal-hal ini kami diskusikan ketika kami mencoba melihat ini secara global. Dan kami berharap bisa mendapatkan pemahaman yang lebih baik mengenai situasi ini.
Thanks, Andrene.
Terima kasih, Andrene. Saya ingin bertanya, jadi salah satu tujuan dari keadilan gender ini untuk mengurangi kekerasan atau menghapus kekerasan terhadap perempuan.
Explain more about this.
Sure. So the timeline that I'm referring to when I create this platform, so ideally we want to create a clearinghouse, like a global, online digital clearinghouse. And what the clearinghouse aim is to, one, connect different, again, places in time and campuses to have conversations across boundaries, across borders, about gender justice and gender justice and sexual violence, so that we can understand across different places what are the problems that are arising based on gender justice and sexual violence. And so the clearinghouse will map on a timeline based on a historical timeline, so that then tackles certain questions. So for instance, if in the US, we are having, it's International Women's Day on this particular day. What are some of the things, or what are some of the initiatives that are had on this particular day to elevate International Women's Day? Next day, we can talk about, if there's Trans Visibility Day and somewhere else, whether that's in the US or somewhere, et cetera, that's another timeline event. So on this day, what are some of the initiatives that other countries, states, nations are having about trans visibility and gender justice? And so this is all going to be a resource for education, and it's all going to be a resource that everyone can contribute. So it's not just a domestic context, but that's essentially the timeline that we're looking at: international context, international timeline that approaches some of the initiatives based on that day and a historical event.
Wow, that's really inspiring. I mean, like, it could be like a database for everybody, so they can like look up and looking for the inspiration of creating maybe a campaign or a movement that maybe like they can get the lesson learned and bring it to their own country. And have you like involved like almost all of the country, or like how you like collecting the initiative from all over the world.
Yeah. So this initiative, the Gender Justice and Digital Life Working Group, has been around for about 4 years. I started 3 or 4. Yeah, so it's still pretty new, but seasoned still. And so I started this position this year. But because through those 4 years, we already had some connections with the University of Tokyo. We have a really strong connection with someone at the University of Tokyo. Her name is Kaori, Dr. Kaori. And so she is also the head of the, she started the Institute for AI, Institute of Artificial Intelligence. And so we are collaborating a lot with the University of Tokyo. And we have folks in Australia, we have folks in London, we have folks in Nigeria, and we're still building this repository of global countries to contribute. I wish I had the list to tell you more, but for at the top of my head, these are some of the ones that we have already collaborated with. And we are we are having a series of conferences to make sure that we are including some of the issues or including more resources that are pertinent to those certain areas, that are important to those certain areas before we actually launch the clearinghouse. I don't believe our clearinghouse will be launched until maybe the end of this year or beginning of next year. And so if there's any other countries or communities or that are online here that would like to be a part of this clearinghouse, we would love to have you. We're still expanding. But yeah, I think those are some of the main ones that we currently have. And I have a more list of other countries, but on the top of my head, these are the ones that I know I just had conversations with.
Oh, wow. That's, I think you should like put the website here. I mean, like, I just want to ensure that it could be accessed publicly by everyone, right?
I won't put a website as yet, but if you want, you can connect me directly if you are interested. Do you mind, should I put my email address? Or that's the best way of contacting me. What would you suggest?
Yes, sure. But like, do you plan like to put it on website or something so like everyone could have access on that and like will be like spread more broadly?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good idea, Igna. If I created like a website that'll filter some of the inquiries for the clearinghouse. I don't have a website of the clearinghouse itself as of right now, but if anyone has direct questions, then maybe that could be an inquiry or a website that can bring in some inquiries about the clearinghouse and whether they're interested.
Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so I want to move to the second or maybe third question, but this time it's for both of you. I know that both of you has already so many initiatives related to the movement, especially to the gender justice movement. So I want to ask, like, what is the gender justice means to you personally, and what inspired you to jump into the movement? I will go to Ninies first.
Okay. Wow. We can spend like the whole 3 days to explain what gender justice means for each of us. But yeah, in this limited space and time, I think one of the best definitions that I've been trying to understood regarding what is gender justice, and it inspires me a lot during the daily activism that I'm doing day by day. For everyone's information, I've been spending like my last 7 years before working with Hivos. I've been working for one of the frontline NGOs on human rights called Commission for the Disappeared and Victims of Violence, or the acronym of it is CONTRAS. It's the national NGO working for past human rights abuses and also police brutality and other forms of human rights violations, advocacy and campaign. And working there for almost 8 years, I've been through a lot of scenes and tragedies and sadness and also small celebrations. For example, if our advocacy has been we won the case, or the advocacy goes well, and so on and so forth. But the experiences that I've gained by working there make me realize that gender justice is a very multi-condition of intersectionality, because what I understood that gender justice would be happen if the racial justice, if the queer justice, if the immigration justice, if the climate justice happens. So it's a combination of a lot of justice happening across the beneficiaries, or across the community of people, across the needs and across the identity of people and the planet. So gender justice for me is the redistribution of power, of the opportunities, of privilege that it used. Those of the privileges are used to being occupied or being entitled only for few people. But with gender justice movements, with gender justice advocacy, we are trying to make the justice visible and accessible for as much as possible people, and all genders should be included, especially the ones who experience the most difficulties and disadvantages, like like LGBT friends, and for example, in American context, maybe African American friends and other minority or historically oppressed groups. So gender justice for me is an ideal condition where inclusion is there, where diversity and equality is there, and where our intervention and our activities are transformed into creating opportunities for every individual to actively challenge the gender norms and gender and stereotypes, and also and also promoting the equal positions for social and political change, or power. And maybe one last point from my side, that gender justice should also allow anyone to test, to learn, and to adapt collectively. So there is no like static point or vacuum space for gender justice, but it should be continuously growing and continuously tested, continuously learn and adapt from time to time, in order to make the approach still relevant and the impacts felt by the targeted groups.
Okay, thank you, Ninies. Just like you said, it could be like just another one whole session of webinar only to talk about what is gender justice. Okay, now we go to Andrene.
So I think what first brought me into this realm of gender justice and how I got into this kind of work really just stemmed from my own experiences as a Black woman in the US, and kind of delved from there. So when I was younger, I started having some questions. Actually, it began maybe in my undergrad.
Yang dimulai ketika saya kuliah S1.
I ended up asking some questions and did some work about how my experiences growing up.
Bagaimana pengalaman saya menjadi dewasa yang sesungguhnya berbeda dengan pengalaman menjadi dewasa teman-teman saya yang Kaukasia.
Kind of infiltrated society. My first work that I've done for gender justice.
Pekerjaan pertama saya untuk keadilan gender sesungguhnya adalah melihat bagaimana remaja
who are punished and exposed in terrible rates. There's this saying for Black women where they are both visible and they are both hyper visible and invisible. And what that means is when a Black girl or when Black girls in the classroom and they give attitude, or if they are too silent, they're very visible in a sense that it seems problematic, but then they're invisible in a sense that people don't see their individual traumas, their experiences, or want to know more in how they became a certain way or even act a certain way. And so that's essentially what hypervisible and invisible might mean for these Black girls and how they are criminalized in this classroom setting. And so the school to prison pipeline and Black girls in particular was how I first started asking questions about gender justice and into this arena. And it kind of just snowballed from there. Mm-hmm. And now I think for my communities and the communities that I am advocating for, what I've learned more about and what I'm passionate about is really visibility of all marginalized communities that are based in gender and gender discrimination, or even racial and gender discrimination. Ninies, you brought up intersectionality, and that's an amazing way of putting these things into context, right? So who are those that are often marginalized because of different power structures of racism, gender, some sexuality, etc. And so this is kind of the realm and that I am I'm situating gender justice in this intersectional lens. And so, yeah, for my community, I am also advocating for those who are the most marginalized. Mm-hmm. I'm advocating for those who are in campus settings that are often silencing a lot of these communities, silencing trans and non-binary folks in campus life, silencing Black communities, Black women, silencing LGBTQ plus people of color. And yeah, so I think in those communities, those are what I'm mostly advocating for. And that was the way in which I got here.
Wow, that's a very long journey, Andrene. And yeah, that's a very deep and touching from both of you. And I know that both of you are very passionate about this issue, and it all starts from the personal experience. And also, I love what Ninies says about gender justice will only be achieved when redistribution of power happen in the society, and also about the collective movement and how it continuously growing and become a movement. And we will talk about it more in the second session because it's related about the organizing strategy. So Ninies, if you can reflect on the current situation in Indonesia, like what is the challenge in building a movement? Especially a gender justice movement itself, which we already mentioned previously about the uneven development that happened, like the internet access that not distributely even in every place. And what else, Ninies?
Yeah, honestly, speaking about the gender justice movement or gender justice activism in Indonesia, today or in the nowadays context, yeah, it's really challenging time because, yeah, we know that we are now living in the regime of digital dominations and the regime of online social media utilization. But one of the sayings from Zeynep Tufekci, one of the techno-sociologists in Turkey, one of the experts in social media movements and civil rights movements, once she said on the TALKSHOW that the great movements that easy to mobilize, usually hard to win. So that's what's happening with the social media activism and the whole the whole internet utilization for voicing the messages and for doing activism, shouting for social change, and gender justice, of course, one of the issues. So I'm one of the believer from what Zeynep Tufekci has been told us like 5 years ago regarding how easy for us to mobilize people in social media, because everyone's got their handphones on the hand, and the Twitter and also other platforms are available for everyone to talk and to debate and to express themselves. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy for us to win the advocacy or to win the goal that we are aiming for, especially for the never-ending issues such as gender justice. It must take us a lot of energies and a lot of mindfulness and thoughtfulness in organizing such activism and such movements toward gender justice, because we are not only dealing with the issues of mobilizing people, but we are also dealing with daily cases of, for example, sexual violence. So we're not only dealing with the reluctancy from the government in ratifying the anti-sexual violence bill, for example, but we are also dealing with people coming to us, make a complaint or telling us about the stories, the violence or the abuse that they experience. So we are both dealing with the advocacy matters, but also dealing with daily, real, concrete cases on a daily basis. So those are the most, I think, the most challenges that I've always wondering of day by day in how to make this two biggest problems connected each other and can be solved at the same time, hopefully, because as we dealing with the cases, but we are also dealing with the enabling environment of the society where sexual violence cannot be accepted at all and at all costs. So I think that's the answer for your question regarding the challenges in organizing gender justice. But one of the other thing that I've considered of the challenge regarding the organizing of gender justice movements or gender justice activism is actually the awareness of the activists themselves, especially in Indonesian context, about how important it is and how inevitable it is to talk about gender issues in every activism that we are doing. No matter what the issues are you are working for example, climate justice or migration issues or poverty issues or tolerance and pluralism issues, you cannot and you will not ever get rid of the gender issues, because we are living by it every day, because we are constructed from the day we were born as one particular gender, right? And that's why no matter the issues that you are working for, you must talk and you must speak, you must taking into consideration the gender aspects of it. And that's one of the challenges that I've experienced myself, to talk about this with the fellow activists or with the colleagues in maybe other NGOs or other communities, that they usually say that no, I'm working for anti-corruption issues, so I'm no bother with what should I bother with gender issues, something like that. So that's the challenge as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ninies. I think if we talk about I think if you talk about the challenges, it's like a never-ending things, which we can talk like all night long, and like the list is goes on and goes on. But yeah, I think like one of the problem mentioned is also related to how the conservatism is growing. And I will go to Andrene. How about in the USA? Like, is it like, do you face like the same setting in there with the growing of conservatism? And I'm also curious because like that recently the Trump administration like initiated the Geneva Consensus Declaration. Even I know the Trump era is end, but like with this declaration, which Indonesia also become one of the co-sponsor, and the main statement of the declaration is to limit or even forbid abortion and trying to bring back the normative family value. And based on your opinion, like, does it have any impact for US condition, or like it is a reflection on what is going on in there related to the gender justice movement?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it broke up a little bit on my end, Igna. Do you mind just repeating what your question was? So you brought up the Trump administration and abortion. Do you mind just going from there and say it again for me?
Oh yeah, I think the problem is in my internet connection. Just like what I speak in the beginning, like, yeah, this is the condition of internet in Indonesia. I even live in the big city, and this is the problem I face every day. Okay, so the question is like, does it have any impact for the US condition related to the consensus itself, or like it is the reflection on what is going on related to on how the conservatism is growing and it has the impact on the gender justice movement?
Yeah, so I think this year has been really rough. Like, I think and I think that the Trump administration did bring out a lot of attitudes and a lot of behaviors and opinions that may have been dormant. But I do think that for those activists and for those communities that have been doing this work, a lot of the activism that is coming abroad, or a lot of the, I shouldn't say activism, a lot of the opinions that are coming to bear, we already know, right? And so I think essentially what is broadening some of the folks that were not doing this work and are now seeing things come to bear, and then they're trying to play catch up, if you will. And so I think one of the dangers of doing that, and what I think a lot of this year has shown us, is that a lot of this activist work, this new activist work, is coming to the forefront and almost shadowing those who have been doing this work for a long time. And I think, so what I mean by that is if there are some people who are now realizing that gender justice, racial justice is an issue, LGBTQ justice is, like, these are all issues, and they're currently doing it, then a lot of the times they are vocal about it without realizing that folks have already done this work and are probably way more educated on this matter than, if that makes sense. And so I think the activism part is important. It's important to have these conversations. But what is also important to recognize that this work is not new, is to recognize that there are folks who have done this work that they should be in conversation with. And that there may be some folks who are more educated on this matter and can guide you further. And so, you know, I think it's always great that folks are having conversations, but I think when we're talking about organizing and when we're talking about these conversations that are hard to have, we need to do a lot of introspection about folks who have already done work, and including in the community setting, because I do think, including in the campus setting, because I do think from my position as well, in the university setting at Northwestern, I am very excluded from some of the organizing work that are happening on the ground, the grassroots level organizing that are oftentimes way more advanced than the community, than the campus setting could ever be. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of my take on the activist stances that we're seeing this year. Activism has surely been an important conversation, and there are a lot of people who are jumping in, but we need to do some more work at folks who have already done this. We have to do some more leveraging of folks who have already done this work and that can bring us further. Yeah.
Okay. So Andrene, but like, do you think like things will get better with the new presidency? Like, I'm sure, like from what I see in the social media, of course, like the movement is growing because, like, yeah, the last presidency is very racist and also like forbid many people rights. So like, do you think like the social movement itself is like getting stronger and it will be like better with this new presidency?
It's hard to say with this new presidency. I do think what was good about this year is that there has been an increased people who are curious.
Yeah.
And so I'll go with that, right? I think that they are, and that's great. I do think that this presidency was more of a harm reduction than it is like a revolution, like everything will be great. I think there is still so much more work to be done. But I think at this rate, the only thing that we are trying to do is to increase harm and increase things getting worse. And I think that it was a step for that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Andrene. So yeah, we hope that this is the beginning, but like, yeah, things will get better like in the futures. And Ninies, let's we go to you. Like, how do you think to build or to organize a massive but a collaborative movement? Because like in the previous question, you also mentioned about that the movement should be a collective to ensure it will like continuously growing. So what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think I want to also adding some extra points to what Andrene has just said earlier, that intergenerational learning, I think, should be one of the pillars that that we need to do if we want to, you know, continue this run or continue this this fighting and this activism, this movement, to in order to achieve our goal and our objective. So, for example, in the journey of passing the law that pro to the marginalized groups, for example, or in the journey of advocating the laws or the, I don't know, the regulations that would be good or would be impacted the marginalized groups and the people who really need assistances and helps. For example, we cannot only talk about the current situations, the current conditions, because I believe that everything is interconnected. The future is connected with the past, and that today's situation is the result of yesterday. So I do believe that intergenerational learning should be taken into place and should be the one of the priorities that activists should be concerned. And that's that whole point about intergenerational learning, intergenerational learning, yeah,
Yes.
Is one of the important parts of to break the impunity For example, because I was working a lot of activisms and movements in the human rights field, in human rights terrain, and to advocate for the past human rights abuses resolvement. And from there, I learned that if we want to make a legacy, if we want to inherit some good futures, or to break the chain of patriarchal culture, or to break the chain of violence, to break the culture of impunity and of inequality, we should work with a lot of people, a lot of generations, because every generation matters, and they do experience different experiences that should be taken into consideration. Because I do also believe that if we can learn something, we can also unlearn something. And one of the things that Indonesia in this context have to unlearn is about patriarchal culture. It's about gender stereotypes, and it's about the discrimination against oppressed people and oppressed groups, and inequality that faced for a long time by the minority groups and marginalized groups. So that's the homework for every activist, I guess, to try the approaches using intergenerational approach, and to talk more, not only the things that we should learn, the things that we should believe, like human rights, like gender justice, like anti-sexual violence, like climate justice, respect to immigrants, blah blah blah, but also we also need to talk about the things that we should unlearn from the society and from the almighty history, and those old stuffs. So
Yes, thank you, Ninies. Like that's really true. When you learn something, you can unlearn it. Yeah. And when you mentioned about the intergenerational learning, like it is remind me to the Andrene initiative about like the global timeline map. I think like it could be like one of the way as a intergenerational learning, because like it could become a lesson learned from years to years, and you can like learn from what already happened, like what is good, what we can take into our country and stuff like that. Okay, so before we move forward, I just want to remind you, you can, if you have any question pop up on your mind, you can just type it in the chat box, and I will ask it directly to the speaker. And also, this event is recorded, and please mute your audio during the session. Yep, okay, thank you. This is the housekeeping notes. Yep, you can read it. And please be mindful that this is a safe space, and so we have no room for any hate speech, and the committee will remove the participant who break the rule. So yeah, it's just a reminder for you guys about our housekeeping rules. And I think we already have several questions in the chat box. Okay, it looks like an essay for exams, yeah. Let me read it first. Okay, so the first question is to Ninies. It's about the beauty perspective for women, because like in some of the area in Indonesia, they have like their own beauty standard. Like, many things, like you have to be slim, for example, you have to have a long hair and stuff like that. And she also mentioned about oh yeah, just some of the example of the beauty standard in Indonesia, like how is your perspective about that, about the beauty standard?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, it could take me to the another whole discussion about the beauty standards applied in Indonesia and how the how the industry utilize it for profit purposes. But yeah, I think again, because I once said about intergenerational learning and how as the people we can have the power to unlearn something. And yeah, one of the most important things that needs to be unlearned is the beauty standard. Because from time to time, if we look back to the history of and her story of the concept of beauty in Indonesia and also around the world, we can see that the beauty of standards is changing from time to time. And it's also changed the perspectives of people who against those beauty standards. So, for example, we have time when we were recognizing people with, for example, with the size of the body that is not not slim or not thin as not beauty, but also there were time where the media and also the industry groups are trying to make an image where it's okay to be fatty or to be not slim because you are still beautiful. But I think those two different different conceptions or different constructions are lead into the same danger because at the very end, people are still being recognized by their appearance, not their human being they by themselves. So I'm not in a position defending, for example, media or beauty industry that promoting people with non-white or non-slim body or appearance, but I'm not also in the position defending the ones who promoting white and slim body, because both of them are having the same dangers as as we experience for a lot of time. And because it's not about the standard that you were trying to reverse, but it's about the mindset and it's about the culture of talking about someone's body or someone's appearance. So I think because there are some misconceptions like, oh yeah, okay, so the beauty standard is not white anymore and it's not slim anymore, so we should promote people with the big size of the big size body, and also people with non-white colors to be more promoted in social media or in commercial TVs like shows and something. But no, it's not the point. The point is how can we be free, and how can we be free from the concepts itself, the concepts of beauty, because the ones who can set the standard is ourselves, not media, not industry, not government, not anyone else. So that's the whole point about it. I think that's the answer for the first question on beauty standard.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Ninies. And I think this is an idea for the committee. Maybe like for the next session, it could be like unlearn beauty standards from around the world. Yeah, because like I'm sure like every country, every region has their own beauty standards, and like we need to unlearn it. Okay, thank you, Ninies. I will move to the next question. I think it could be for both of the speaker, for Andrene and for Ninies. But I will go to Andrene first. So it's about the digital activism that both of you already mentioned before. Like nowadays, like on the other hand, people are more familiar with the issue of activism, but like on other hand, activism is a trend that followed by many people without trying to learn about the root issues of the struggle. So how do you take advantage of the situation to maximize the activism itself, and in order to support the activism movement to be like continuously?
Yeah, so is the question that to figure out how activism can be long-standing, or how can activism be a continuous effort when there are different ways of approaching activism? Is that the question? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I think that ultimately, in order for us to keep like the stamina going in activism and in keeping people curious and keeping people wanting to be vocal on issues that matter, we have to think about, I don't know, I think we almost have to be introspective, but also like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think in order to, that's a hard question. I'm struggling. I think ultimately folks have to continue being curious. And I think a lot of that curiosity has to stem from listening to the times. I think listening to where everyone is moving, listening to each other, being selfless, and being curious is probably the only way to keep these conversations going. I think a lot about what Ninies and Igna had brought up about like this generational changes that has happened. And I think about the civil rights movement and how that has been a fire that ignited at a certain time, and then something happens, and then it's ignited again, and then something happens, and then it's ignited again. Like, I feel like oftentimes with activism, things happen, a shock happens, and then people end up being curious. For the US, the George Floyd happened, and then people were curious, and so it sucks. But I do think that if people are cognizant of the times and don't shy away from the issue that is right in front of you, then activism will always be a thing. People will always want more for society. People will always want more for our well-being, for each other's well-being, right? And so I think activism is always ignited by, and it's terrible to say, but it's true. I feel like activism is always mostly ignited by a shock in the system or something that's happening for other people to be curious. And it shouldn't be this way, but I do think that that's one way in which activism always has a steam to it, if that makes sense. I hope that answers the question in some way.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrene, because like I also agree that like me myself, I think I joined activism because like at the first I'm curious with the issue, and maybe because like there is a trend that happened at that time, and that's how in the end like we find our passion and we stay in this movement. I think like, I mean, maybe a lot of people join in the movement at the beginning, but like sometimes they go because like they are no longer interested. But I mean, like the people that very passionate about the issue will always be there. How about Ninies?
Okay, I hope my answer will in complementary with what Andrene has said. I think stamina is one thing, but also chances for pause and reflect is also important, because in order to see the gaps and to see the unconnected points from one point to the other point, we need time and we need moment to pause and reflect. And because especially talking about today's activism, especially talking about the social media utilization for social causes and for driving social change, we need to also aware that there are consequences such as polarization, fake activism, and also the impulsiveness of making something viral but meaningless inside. So there are consequences, and there are reasons for us to hold a second, to pause a second, and to reflect to what have been going, and of course, to adapt with another shortcomings, or to adapt with another strategies that is that we think is strategic for the future, because living in a world like this, we need to be aware that we never know how to deal with people's biases, people's rumors, people's beliefs that are different, of course. And in other side, we also sometimes enjoy ourselves that much in our echo chambers. We think that our activism goes broadly or impactful, effective, and reach the targets. But we need to analyze that more, because maybe we're not going anywhere, but only talk with our own echo chambers. Because in the real life, we cannot really mute people, we cannot really unfollow people, because we are living as a social being. But in a social media, thanks to social media, we can mute and unfollow people. So that's why in shifting the body and the mind and the soul from online to offline, from offline to online, and to combine those different fields and different terrains is challenging, and it needs stamina, but also needs time to reflect and pause.
Okay, thank you, Ninies. I will take the next question that I think it's still relevant with what are we with your answer. It's related to wait, I lost it. Like, what is the strategy like to create an international activism? Because like we always mention about this patriarchal society, and they are undermining the gender equality issue compared to other issues. So what is the strategy?
That's a forever question to be struggled for.
Yeah. I think we need a workshop for this, to how to build a strategy to create an intersectional activism.
Yeah, in terms of modalities, I think we do have a lot of modalities. We have a lot of experts, we have a lot of scholars, we have a lot of activists doing their activism for a long time. And there are a lot of best practices and also lessons learned that will enrich our movements. But I think as Andrene has said, that stay curious is mandatory. Because by being curious, we will not easily trapped into satisfaction. And it's a good thing though, because if one day we feel like, oh my God, we make a lot of achievements, and wow, we did a great job, we won the battle, and we stop being curious, we are satisfied enough with what we are doing, then we will stop. But the devils, the evils, the perpetrators, the oppressors, or the oligarchs, or whoever the enemies are, will continuously taking that satisfaction as their chances to strike again and to, to steal our rights and to hinder the justice, or any ideal situation that we're dreaming of. So we I think we cannot easily being satisfied with what we are doing, and we need to always put our critical and objective minds, critical feedbacks from us to the fellow activists, for example. So the culture of hegemony and the culture of seniority that's still happening in Indonesia must be diminished. I think must be eliminated, because that's one of the reasons why we cannot go forward, or we stuck on the situation that is nowhere to go and no progress that we made. I think one of the reasons is because we were trapped with a very seniority heavy culture, where the seniors always better than the junior, and the junior should always should always respect to what the seniors saying. So
thank you, Ninies. We still have a lot of homework, of course, to achieve like the gender justice situation. Okay, so I'll move the question to Andrene, or before that, do you have anything to add, Andrene?
Yeah, I guess something really quickly. I love that answer. And I think thinking about intersectionality as an educational tool, we can also think about it as a practice. We can also think about it as a practice, right? And so if we think about thinking about like movements or thinking about readings, these are different ways where you can practice thinking about which voices are not being heard in this discussion, which voices is not being heard in this reading, right? Which voices need to be heard that are absent. And I think if we continuously ask that question in everything that we read, every movement that we see, every event that ends up being a shock to society, then we can end up thinking about an intersectional activism, right? We can think of, and so it's a way we have to intentionally think about things and ask the question of who is missing, what voice is missing that needs to be there. And I think that's a really good place to start.
Okay, thank you, Andrene. There's one question for you. It's related to the trauma experienced by the people from conflict areas, or also racial minority, is a challenge in itself for a movement. How can you approach the community?
Yeah, I have that question often. Even thinking about the kind of work that I'm doing, and if we think about how it directly affects my life, it can be really heavy. And so I think how I approach kind of these questions, or how I approach these discussions, I have to actively have conversations with folks that are in a different position than myself. So I have to actively have conversations with folks who are not, I consider myself as a cisgender, hetero Black woman. I have to have conversations with folks who don't fall within that context. Black trans folks, LGBTQ folks, people who are gender non-binary. And so these conversations is what will guide my different approaches, right? And so I think about, I can give an example of the work that, Igna, you and I had talked about. I work really closely with mothers in the South Side of Chicago who have lost their sons by gun violence, right? And so I work so closely with them, but I don't know how it feels to have lost a son from gun violence, right? And so in order for me to approach these kind of hard So I think that's one of the ways that I do so, is I understand that my perspective is not the only one in the fight for racial gender justice. There are so many other issues under this umbrella that also need to be heard and be visible in a way that, perhaps mine has been more visible in. And so, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Andrene. And Ninies, do you want to add something? Because your work is also related with working with the minorities who has also a lot of trauma.
Yeah, actually in 2011, 12, and 13, I guess. I forgot the exact years, but yeah, I was working with Peace Women across the globe, the organization that dealing with post-conflict areas. I was working in Aceh, Atambua, and Ambon to start an education, basic education for young people on sexuality and gender subject. And yeah, those three post-conflict areas have their traumas and have their modalities as well to capacitate themselves regarding gender and sexuality issues. I'm one of the believer of do no harm concepts, because I think if you guys are familiar with conflict sensitivity approach, you might know, and you might familiar as well with the do no harm approach, where the first and foremost that needs to be done is understanding the whole context of the conflict. Conflict is not only where the blood is there, the conflict is not where the tension and the fighting is happening, but conflict is actually the daily living that we are now living with. So I think every area, for example, Indonesia is a conflict area, because every area in Indonesia, I think, has their own trauma, has their own past human rights violations, have their own conflict, whether it's horizontal or vertical.
Punya sejarah konflik, apakah itu horizontal atau vertikal.
To answer that question.
Jadi untuk menjawab pertanyaan itu, hal pertama dan untuk dilakukan adalah memahami konteks konflik tersebut, melakukan riset, menyelidikinya, berbicara atau berdiskusi dengan orang-orang di sana, lalu menganalisis apa sih perangkat-perangkat yang mereka miliki, atau ada nggak kapasitas-kapasitas lokal, orang-orang penting lokal yang bisa kita ajak kerja bersama. Nah, itu adalah hal-hal yang saya mengerti dari konsep do no harm.
Whatever the interventions that you are going to make.
Satu hal yang harus kita sadari adalah apapun intervensi yang akan kita lakukan, hal intervensi tersebut akan berinteraksi dengan konteks area tersebut dan akan menjadi konteks baru di area tersebut.
Thank you, Ninies, for the answer.
Terima kasih, Ninies, untuk penjelasannya. Andrene, terima kasih. Semoga ini menjawab pertanyaan teman-teman.
I think we still have like around 12 minutes left. So since there is still a lot of question in the chat box, and also there is some people who want to ask directly to the speaker, I think I will let one of them to speak directly. So I will let Maria Violeta.
Hello.
Yeah. So please.
Thank you very much for this chance. Before I ask this question, these few questions are gonna be really based on political. So I apologize if I really hit a nerve for the speakers and all the speakers here. First is for Miss Nini. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. In accordance to this webinar topic, we all know that the sexual violence elimination bill is not yet being published for about 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. And based from what I've read in an online news site, KOMPAKS, basically, is that it is not easy to publish the bill, and it is due to quarrels of ideology within the parliamentary, where some fractions are saying it is against their beliefs, or so I've heard, so I read it. Do you think that quarrels of ideology within the parliamentary and saying that the bill itself is against their beliefs can be a valid reason that the bill was restrained from it being published? That is my question for Ms. Ninies. And another question for Ms. Andrene. Um, I want to ask you about this. Just 2 days ago, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris has announced for an upcoming all-female communication staff, and even Biden himself may or may not consider an LGBTQ plus cabinet appointees. For me personally, even though it does not have any direct effect on myself, but I feel like it's such a great decision that he made in order to place women in a political position to represent all the fellow women in the United States. So I want to ask, do you think Biden's decision of changing staff would be the first step in advancing gender justice in the US? That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So I will let Ninies and Andrene to answer the question.
Okay, I will not take so much time to talk about the dynamic of decision-making processes for passing the anti-sexual violence bill, because Indonesia is the regime of oligarch, so everything is ruled by them, and the decisions made by them. So that's the answer, the short answer for that question. But the more elaborative one would be, for any reason, any reasons that has been stated by the parliament's members for legitimating their actions of their actions to not passing the anti-sexual violence bill are upsetting and are not acceptable. So whatever the reasons, whether it's religion, whether it's, I don't know, force major or whatever, I don't think that we should accept that as legitimate reason, because I don't know how to put it without giving the pardon my French, if I would be very emotional about it, but Komnas Perempuan, the Commission on Anti-Violence Against Women, and other colleagues in LBH APIK, and the advocates for gender equality, the advocates for for sexual violence have spent their years, their decades to talk about how urgent is the situation of sexual violence. We came with facts, we came with victims, we came with testimonies, we came with data and evidence-based modalities, but it's not even changing their minds. So I come to conclusion where what matters for them in the parliament is not about the people, but the benefit for them, the personal advantages that they can gain from passing particular law or for not passing particular law. So it's about their interest, not us. So that's the answer for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ninies. Andrene?
Yeah, Maria, thank you for that question. So I'm thinking about Biden and Harris. I think, and even just the communications board that you had mentioned before, I want to provide some more context and then I'm coming with this answer. So I do think that for Biden, I think about the kind of research that was done while he was trying to choose who his VP pick was. And if we remember that conversation, we know that a lot of pressure was put onto Biden from organizers, from academics, from the Black community to let them know that we would want a Black VP, a Black woman VP, right? And so the short list had folks like Kamala Harris, had Stacey Abrams, had Atlanta's mayor, right? And so I think he essentially came into this question almost as if it not forced the hand, but it did apply pressure for him to choose our
Jadi
VP.
sesungguhnya Biden mendapatkan tekanan untuk memilih wakil presiden dari kelompok kulit berwarna, sehingga dia memutuskan untuk memilih Kamala Harris. Dan juga sebenarnya ada tekanan-tekanan dari akademisi yang menekan Biden untuk melakukan keputusan yang sifatnya sangat tegas.
And perhaps it's a step in the right direction as far as responsiveness is concerned. But I do think in order for this work to have a longevity or to be sustained, this has to continue the work in and the organizing efforts, the activist efforts, the academic efforts that have really guided Biden in order to think about these bolder moves that will maybe create more trust in our society, more trust to the US that, all the harms that Trump has done, Joe Biden, I'm making an effort to make it right. And by making this bold move of having an all-women communications board, perhaps you can see that trust in me. And I think a lot of Americans are distrustful because of this past 4 years. And perhaps that was an area in which they're trying to do that. Now, just because there is an all-women's communications board doesn't always mean that all women will be represented in this communications board. You know what I mean? Like, I think there are a lot of different fragmentations and intragroup differences in gender and communities overall. I can only hope that having Black women and having white, women across different positions will create change, but we will only know once they're actually in these positions. So I am hopeful in some sense, and I am grateful for the kind of pressures that a lot of these communities have put on Biden to do this.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Andrene and Ninies. I wish it's answer the Maria question. Okay. So we almost in the end of the session, and I'm so sorry. I see there's still some question in the chat box, but because the time is limited, we are not able to answer all of the questions tonight. But the committee will make sure that they will collect all of the questions, and it will from the speaker, and they will put it on the social media. If I'm not mistaken, the Twitter handle is @aksigerak. So I'm sure the committee will put the answer there anytime soon. Okay, so that's a very lovely discussion. And for me personally, this is a very inspiring session. We can learn that building a movement is not easy. We need to build an intergenerational learning and intersectional movement in order to sustain the movement itself. And it is important to stay curious because that's when you will always learn. And one of the most important things is when you learn something, you can always unlearn it, the way we need to unlearn about patriarchy, discrimination, and the other stuff. Okay, before we reach the end of the session, we have a quick polling for you to answer. So please, the committee, you can start the polling. Yeah, it's in Bahasa Indonesia. Yeah, so you have time to answer it.
Sorry, host, mind reading the questions for everyone?
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry. Where is the polling? I'm so sorry, but like the polling question is gone from my screen. Where can I access it?
Okay, no problem then. I'm gonna close in 2 minutes, yes?
Okay. Okay, so while we waiting, okay, yeah, so it's the poll result. The first one is, in your opinion, how similar are the challenges of activism for promoting gender justice in Chicago to those in Jakarta? The most question is a little bit similar. The second question is, what do you think is the fundamental difference between challenges of activism for gender justice in Jakarta and those in Chicago? It's related to society's gender expectation. So like 34% of the participants answer that. And the last one is about what topics should Jarak raise in the next meeting. And 70% of the participants answer men's involvement in a feminist movement. Oh, that's a very interesting topic. Okay, thank you all for the participation in the polling. And before we end the session, I want Andrene and Ninies to just quickly say your closing remarks.
Okay, Andrene first, maybe.
I mean, okay, so yeah, I'm very happy that I was here. Thank you all for inviting me. Huge thanks to Sabina for reaching out to me and then letting me know that this is a thing, and then having me come here. And yeah, I'm very excited. Although I'm very critical about this moment in gender justice and in the US, I do want to say that I am optimistic, and I believe in a lot of these movements that we're doing. And I am believing in them because of folks like you who are really interested in this issue area. And so thank you again for being here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all very soon. Again, I'm also creating this Gender Justice Global Clearinghouse. So if anybody is on this call that would like to be a part of this Gender Justice Clearinghouse that I will be pioneering within the next year and a half, please do reach out to me. I will figure out whether or not I can give a website in order to streamline these inquiries, or if I should give my email address. Sabina and I will talk, and then I will give the information to them. Igna, do you mind maybe forwarding to everybody who was there this information in order to contact me for the clearinghouse?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so thank you all so much, and have a great afternoon, day, or night, wherever you are placed in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrene.
Okay, yeah, thank you again for having me, Jarak, and other activists, women activists, and the whole crowd here in the room, the audiences from, I think, a lot of part of the world. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I think one of the most inspiring and long-lasting quote from Kimberly Crenshaw. Did I mention her name clearly? Yeah, one of the lawyer and civil rights advocate and also intersectional feminist, Kimberly Crenshaw. She has this famous quote that I want to re-quote it this time, that if you see inequality or injustice as them problem, as their problem, or as unfortunate other problem, that is a real problem. So before we are going too far talking about the society and the justice that they are deserve to accept, deserve to receive, we need to also talk about the inequality, which is the problems of everyone. And as long as we consider inequality is only the unfortunate of other groups, the unfortunate of other people, not us, not our problem, not our not our business. So that's the problem that we are struggling with. Yeah, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ninies. Thank you, Andrene. In Andrene time, I think it's still quite early in the morning. So thank you for making time to join this webinar. And for Ninies, it's almost late. Yeah, it's maybe almost the nap time in the in Jakarta. And so yeah, it's always a good thing to have a fresh point of view about something. So thank you for this fruitful discussion, and I wish all of the participants enjoy this. I wish it's the beginning of a joint movement to create a bigger impact for a better future, and I hope there will be more collaboration in the future, which can link many initiatives across the country. And thank you for all the participants who still stay until the end of the session. Thank you for all the team that make today's talk show happen. For Kak Naima, Kak Mirisa, Kak Clara from the academic network of the Movement for Ending Violence Against Women, Aprilia, and also Mariam, who become the interpreter for today. Also for Adika and Jasmine, who become the sign language translators for today's event. Also for Kak Sabina and Kak Dita, who are in charge for the technical and the security. So see you in another seri Belajar Sama-Sama Talk Show. Please follow @Aksi Gerak Twitter's account for more update. Have a good night for our friends in Indonesia, and have a good day, Andrene, and all of you from the other side of the globe. Bye.
Thank you very much for the discussion.
Thank you. That's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much. We apologize. There was a bit of disturbance in the chat box, but we've removed the attendee. We apologize for any inconveniences caused.